taking your bike to the next level and making it look pro is all about the finer details, and one of those is cable routing. You'd never see a pro riding with cables like this, so let's neaten them up and take this bike to the next level. So this is my Scott Genius. I've got the brakes, I've got the shifter, but I've also got these two cables for the twin lock remote lockout system for the fork and shock. First, let's look at the routing and see if I can play with that to neaten them up a little bit. So this bike has got internal routing. You can see here there's this port on the head tube of the bike, and that's got the rear brake, the remote for the dropper seat post and the shifter all going in there. So it goes down the down tube and pops out at various points of the bike. So it's really neat from the middle of the bike back. It's really just the front of the bike that I need to sort out. So I'm just going to undo this sort of bolt on the side of the port here. I'm going to play around, sliding these cables in and out just to try and match them up a little bit. And then I'm going to try and attach them together somehow just to neaten them up slightly. So what I've done here is just actually push the rear brake hose into the frame slightly more. And I'm trying to match it up to this other cable on this left-hand side of my bar, which is my remote for the dropper seat post. They're similar sort of length cables, and I'm trying to join those two together. You've just got to make sure that you've still got enough slack. So for my rear brake, it pops out under the bottom bracket here and goes out to that caliper. I need a little bit of slack there so the suspension can move. With the dropper seat post, it doesn't really matter because it's all internal, as long as I'm not pulling it too tight. So there we go, they sort of look quite similar lengths now. I'm just going to tighten that back up. So these two cables exit the bike at the same place and they go to the same side of the bar, and there's now a few different ways of tying them together. First is the zip tie, which will do the trick, but it won't look super neat. Next is just a bit of electrical tape to tape them together. That's going to look pretty good. Or for the really pro version, you can use this heat shrink. I've seen people like Fab and Burrell use this, or Fab and Burrell's mechanic, should I say. So slide both cables through the heat shrink, heat that up so it comes really nice and tight to those cables, and that's going to look really neat. The heat shrink version is going to be the most labour intensive because I've got to remove the cable for my remote for the dropper seat post, but also the hydraulic line for my brakes. But we do have some in-depth videos on both those things, so check those out if you're going to use this method. So when sorting your cables out by the cockpit, it's also worth thinking about number placement. If you race and you're going to mount your numbers to the bar, think about where you can put that plate, maybe in front or behind the cables. So now I'm onto these twin lock levers, and I'm going to use the electrical tape version now. And I'm going to start off at the fixed end up at the lever and just wrap this tape tightly around those two cables to hold them together neatly. The final thing to sort out my bars is just getting the correct cable length. So my front brake, that looks pretty good. I wouldn't want that any shorter. But this shifter, this outer cable can be quite a bit shorter than that. There's plenty of slack in that. So that's going to really neaten that up if I cut that down a little bit. I've just slightly moved the order of these so that my lockout cable for the fork goes just in front of the shifter cable, so that shifter is nice and tight and goes straight into that frame. Front brake always sticks out the furthest to the front of the bike, and also make sure you wrap it around the inside of the fork leg and don't go around the outside where it could get damaged. So you can see on these forks you've got that nice little mount there that holds that cable nice and tight, so you don't even need a zip tie. And it's the correct length, so there's not too much slack up here. For any external routing of these cables, I like to use the smallest zip ties you've got, just because they're nice and neat. You really don't need those big strong zip ties for this. So there you go, getting neat cable routing is all about getting them as short as possible, but not too short, because that's going to stop things from working, like your bars turning properly, or your shifter, or even dropper seat post working correctly. You should click on the GMBN logo to subscribe to the channel, it's totally free. And click down there for a video showing you how to shorten your disc brake hoses, and down there for how to set up your handlebar controls. Give us a thumbs up if you think this video has been good.